Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on today's very special webinar, creating a slashing bedroom EMF, with our special guest speaker, certified EMF expert, Cathy Cooke. So before we begin, give people about another minute to arrive. Just a quick outline for what we're going to be covering today. I'll be doing intros, both for me and Cathy. Then we'll get into the main content of Cathy's presentation, which will last about 35 minutes. And then we have a very special announcement to make to all of you, along with a special offer just for those of you in the room today. And we'll end with Q&A. So like I said, intros are going to be really quick. For those of you who don't know me, my name is R. Blank. I am the CEO of Shield Your Body. I formerly taught on the faculty at the University of Southern California Viterbi School of Engineering. And along with my father, Dr. Martin Blank, I co-authored Overpowered about the science of EMF health effects. And this all follows a 20-year career in software engineering. So if you see me looking away, I have two monitors, so I'll try to stay focused. So today we're going to be talking about a really important topic, and that's reducing EMF in the bedroom. Of course, we want to reduce our exposure to EMF in all parts of our lives, but the bedroom really is the most important place because it's where we sleep and where we spend about a third of our lives. So if there's one place where we really want to focus our efforts, it's in the bedroom. Now, last month, I invited certified building biologist Cathy Cooke to share her knowledge on creating a sleeping sanctuary. Cathy talked about issues like indoor air quality, mold exposure, comfort and aesthetics, temperature, light, and even noise. And if you missed that webinar, it's posted on our YouTube channel, so you can watch the recording, and you'll actually get a link to view that in the email after this webinar is over. So today, we're bringing you part 2 of the series on creating a sleep sanctuary. And of course, we're going to take a deep dive into how you can reduce EMF in your bedroom. This is a crucial piece to creating the healthiest sleeping environment possible. Cathy is going to teach you about all of these hidden sources in your bedroom and how you can take simple steps today to get better sleep tonight. So without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Cathy. Cathy, go ahead. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, R. It is really a pleasure to be here with everyone again. And I hope that everyone listening was able to implement some of the steps that I talked about last month. And of course, if anyone has questions about any of that information, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. If you didn't catch part 1, I'll just introduce myself quickly so you know who I am and why I'm presenting this topic to you today. As R said, my name is Cathy Cooke, and I'm a board-certified holistic nutritionist and a certified building biology environmental consultant and certified electromagnetic radiation specialist with the Building Biology Institute. In my practice as a building biologist, I assess buildings for anything that may be causing health problems. So this includes indoor air quality, like mold and chemical off-gassing, ventilation, combustible gas products, and of course, EMF exposure. So I have combined holistic nutrition and building biology to address both the body and the environment to help my clients achieve optimal health. I'm also the founder of Idahoans for Safe Technology, which is an advocacy and awareness group for the safer use of modern-day communications. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, and I currently live in Boise, Idaho. If you'd like to learn more about my work, my website is listed on the slide here, which is wholehomeandbodyhealth.com. So just briefly, if you're unfamiliar with building biology, I encourage you to go back and watch part 1, where I took a few minutes to talk about the history and mission of the Building Biology Institute, or you can simply visit the website at the link provided on the slide here. So as I mentioned last time, in the field of building biology, our primary focus is the bedroom. Of all places in the home, we want the bedroom to be as pristine as possible. Of course, this is because the bedroom is where we sleep. Good quality sleep is the foundation for health. When you don't get a good night's sleep, your whole body suffers. along with your work, your performance, your relationships, even exercise, diet. Pretty much everything in your life suffers when you don't feel well from a poor night of sleep. So sleep is when we heal, we rejuvenate, detox the brain, and prepare for the next day. If we don't sleep well, we don't feel well, and our quality of life as well as our health can greatly suffer. I also mentioned last time that poor quality sleep is associated with numerous health conditions like heart disease and stroke, Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, type 2 diabetes, lowered immunity, hormone dysregulation, increased anxiety and depression, impaired brain function and cognition, decreased tissue repair, weight management issues, decreased endurance and exercise tolerance, and overall increased risk of mortality. So we must optimize our sleep. And the first step in that direction is to optimize the bedroom. So you may be doing a great job with your air quality, comfort, aesthetics, noise, light, the things I talked about last time. But if you still haven't addressed your EMF exposure, then you're really missing one of the most critical pieces to a healthy sleeping environment. Now, I understand that this topic can be difficult for many to accept. After all, you can't see, taste, hear, or smell those invisible EMFs you're being bombarded with. But in the past few years that I've been helping people reduce their exposure, the number one comment I get from clients is that they suffer from poor quality sleep. I am a firm believer that EMF exposure is the most overlooked and underappreciated reason for poor sleep. So the question is, why do EMFs have such a negative effect on your sleep to begin with? One of the primary ways that EMFs affect your biology is through oxidative stress. I encourage you to look up the work of Dr. Martin Pall if you want to dive deeper into this science. That's Pall, P-A-L-L. Dr. Pall is one of the foremost researchers regarding EMFs and how it affects you on a cellular level. So what we know is that consistent exposure to non-native EMFs can cause a host of issues, and for my clients, disturbed sleep is the most common symptom, like I said before. Studies have shown that even very weak EMF exposure can disrupt melatonin production. EMFs are widely known to cause nervous system disruption, making it more difficult for you to relax and unwind at night. EMFs also increase anxiety and irritability, which directly affects sleep quality. I have numerous clients that experience headaches, heart palpitations, musculoskeletal issues from EMF exposure, and clearly these will all affect your ability to sleep well. And, honestly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So you can see how important it is to reduce your EMF exposure if you really want to get the best sleep possible. So, okay, how do we do it? Well, let's talk briefly about the four main fields because, this topic is really big and it can be really overwhelming for people. So the four main fields that we're talking about here is electric fields, magnetic fields, radio frequency, and dirty electricity. Also worth noting are the peripheral fields of static electricity and blue light. Each of these fields needs to be addressed. They each come from different sources and have their own mitigation strategies. So we'll take these one by one to help clarify the topic and give you actionable steps for each field. All right, so before we do that, I just want to make a quick note about testing. I know a lot of you have questions about this, and though I'm going to give you actionable steps you can take right away to reduce your exposure, it's still highly recommended that you know what the actual levels are of each field inside your home. For this reason, I recommend that everyone has their own meter. And I'd like for you to test regularly as things can change often in your environment. So I have a few pictures here of my favorite meters for the layperson. The first one is the Tri-Field TF2. Now I like this one because it tests electric fields, magnetic fields, and radio frequency. And it's under $200. So for the price to measure all three fields, this meter really is a good value. It's not, of course, as accurate as my professional meters. My professional meters are several $1,000s a piece. But it's pretty good starting point for the layperson, and actually does give you a lot of very, very useful information. The meter in the middle is the Safe Sound Classic, and this is from Safe Living Technologies. It only tests radio frequency, but it's very accurate and very, very easy to use. I also recommend the Safe and Sound Pro, which is on the right. It's nearly as accurate as my professional meters and well worth the cost, and a fraction of the cost of my radio frequency meters. So I do sell all of these on my website, and I have a discount code for the Safe and Sound meters listed there if you want to check those out. Of course, I also suggest a thorough assessment be completed by a certified building biologist, as there are some issues that will be beyond your ability to measure or to mitigate, If you're really serious about creating the healthiest home possible, an evaluation by an expert really is invaluable. Okay, I do want to talk about the measurements, however, just briefly. So this slide here shows the building biology guidelines for taking measurements of each of the fields, as well as the common sources of each field. I suggest that you take a screenshot of this if you'd like to keep it for your records, and I'll give you a second to do that. If you need me to come back to this slide later, I'll be happy to do so. But just keep in mind, these are just guidelines. You personally may react to levels lower than what's listed here, or to levels that are higher. Everyone is very different, but we do know that biological impact happens at even the lower levels. So, our goal as building biologists is to get these numbers as low as possible, especially in the bedroom. Okay, so let's start off with electric fields. All buildings that run electrical wires through their walls have electric fields. This is a simple fact of living with electricity. If you look at the bedroom here, you can see the dotted lines along the bottom half of the wall, on the floor and the ceiling. And there's also one right at pillow level, which is a little bit difficult to see with this picture. But these are the areas where wires are typically run in a home. You'll notice that it's just about head level when you're laying in bed. So the problem here is that the electrons that are flowing through those wires don't actually stay in the wires. They move in a circular fashion out into the living space, and they usually come about 6 feet out from those walls. This typically means that the closer you are to a wire, whether you can see it or not, the greater your exposure is to that electric field. This is one of the hardest fields for people to really take seriously, because most people think this is totally normal. Most of us have really never known anything different. And so I often hear the same response from non-believers. People have been living with this forever, so it's obviously not a problem. Well, that's not exactly true. In many parts of the world, people still live without electricity, and they survive just fine without it. And for those of us in industrialized areas, electricity is only about 100 years old. And on the scale of human evolution, that's nothing. So I would pose the question, how has the status of our health been in the last 100 years? Chronic health issues are at an all-time high. So maybe it's time we put a little bit more thought into our normalization of bathing in these fields 24/7. Okay, so I can hear many of you saying, yeah, that might be true, but I'm not going to live in the dark ages. I get it. You're not likely to give up your electricity. So then what can you do about it? Well, if you have a meter, I suggest you test your fields to see what your levels are. The most important place to test is right at your pillow. If the levels are outside the safe range, and really they almost always are, then there are a few things you can do. The first thing you can do is actually move your bed away from the wall by at least a few feet. You can do this regardless of whether you have a meter or not. The point here is that the farther you get from those wires, the more the fields will reduce. Anybody can do this, and really, we all should be doing this. Secondly, if you do have a meter, then I suggest you turn off the breaker to your bedroom. This is easy to do. You just go out to the main breaker panel, you find the bedroom breaker, and you switch it to the off position. Then I want you to go back to your pillow and see what the measurement is after you've de-energized the room. Usually the numbers will go down significantly. And of course, this is what we want. If the numbers are still elevated, and that would be above 0.3 volts per meter, then you may need to turn off adjacent breakers as well. For example, in my bedroom, it's directly above the kitchen. And so I'm being exposed to the fields from the lights that are in the ceiling of the kitchen, as well as some of the appliances. And then I have a hallway right next to me, which also has lights. So for me, I have to turn off all of those breakers, the kitchen and the hallway and the bedroom, to get those numbers to what I would consider acceptable. And I do. I turn those breakers off every night before I go to bed. In fact, the breaker in my bedroom is just permanently off. I don't ever turn it on because I don't need electricity in my bedroom. You know, all I'm doing in there is sleeping. So it's important to note, though, that switching off and on your breakers every night is not recommended, but it is okay for testing purposes. And then once you identify which breakers to turn off, you can then have an electrician install a kill switch or purchase a remote cutoff switch like the EMF sleep safe. Either of these options will turn off the specific circuits that you need to without you having to go to the breaker every night and switch that breaker off and on. If you want more information about the sleep safe, you can find that at my website as well. And this really is the ideal way to handle the existing electric fields in your bedroom. Note that occasionally when you turn the breakers off to your bedroom, the fields can actually increase. And this is due to the cancellation effect from nearby circuits. So it's important to test before you decide to turn off the breakers. But until you get a meter or until you hire a consultant, you can still move the bed away from the wall. And I strongly suggest that you do that. Okay, another really important thing you can do to reduce the electric fields where you sleep, or anywhere in your house for that matter, is to avoid having any kind of wires near you or underneath the bed. So when I'm doing an assessment in a client's home, I almost always find wires plugged in behind the bed. They're often running underneath the bed, or there are at least lamps and alarm clocks plugged in right next to the bed. These all will dramatically increase the fields you're exposed to. So the simple solution here is to unplug them or don't have them in the room at all. If you need a reading light, I recommend just using a clip-on book light that's powered by a battery. If you must have an alarm clock, I would suggest putting it on the other side of the room, or you can always use a battery-powered version. Quite simply, you want no wires or electronics of any kind right next to you or in the bedroom at all. And yes, this includes your phone and the charging cable. Those charging cables are extremely high. Even, when they don't have a phone on them, they're still giving off a very large voltage. So basically unplug anything and everything you can in the bedroom. Okay, now let's move on to magnetic fields. This one is a little bit more complicated, as magnetic fields can be elusive and sometimes difficult to track down. You definitely need a meter for this one. Otherwise, you really have no idea whether or not you have them. So common sources of magnetic fields, they come from overhead or buried power lines, wiring errors, current on your water pipe, gas pipe, or cable line, or from point sources like appliances with variable speed motors. So think of things like refrigerators, blenders, hair dryers, electric toothbrushes, electric shavers, and things like that. So there's no way to know whether you have magnetic fields from your power lines or on your water or gas lines without testing them. And so this is why a meter or professional assessment is so important. You can, however, limit your exposure to the point sources. So for example, never place a bed or a chair or a couch on the other side of the wall where a large appliance or the breaker panel is. In fact, just last week, I measured a very high magnetic field reading on a little girl's bed because directly on the other side of the wall was the refrigerator. And this isn't really something that we think about because we don't see it. So the solution, though, was really simple. We just moved the bed to the other side of the room and we took care of the problem. So this also goes for digital alarm clocks. And yes, I know it's hard to believe that such a very small and simple device could be dangerous, but believe me, digital alarm clocks have some of the highest magnetic fields I measure. So I don't want you to have it right next to you, all night long. If you really have to have one, you can put it on the other side of the room. And so I also suggest limiting your exposure to things like electric razors and toothbrushes. Mind you, the amount of time that you're using them is minimal, so it's not a huge deal. But if you're sensitive and you have non-electric option, then why wouldn't you choose the safer version? So, we have manual toothbrushes. They work great. So I would recommend using the simpler versions. And just like with electric fields, remember to keep wires and other devices at a distance from you. So many cords or plugs actually have transformers on them, like your computer charger. And these transformers have high magnetic fields in and of themselves. So keep them at least a few feet from your body. Again, do your best to keep electronics of any kind out of the bedroom. If you do have a meter and you find that you have high magnetic fields from sources that you can't identify or control, then really you need to have an assessment with a building biologist so they can help you solve the issue, because fixing these fields can sometimes get a little bit complicated and you want to make sure that you do it properly. All right, now let's talk about everyone's favorite EMF, which is radio frequencies. When most people hear EMF, this is what they're thinking. Radio frequencies come from our wireless devices. Think radio waves, information that travels through the air. And exposure to radio frequency comes from things like cell phones and cell towers, cordless phones, your Wi-Fi router, smart meters, wireless earbuds, smart speakers, pretty much anything with Bluetooth, fitness trackers, smart watches, wireless mouses and keyboards, baby monitors are always very high, certain appliances, really so many more things. You wouldn't believe some of the things actually that I find in people's homes. And often they have no idea that items even have this radio frequency ability on them. In just the last few weeks, I discovered a grill, a stuffed animal, an air purifier, water softener, CPAP machine, thermostat, a kitty litter box, and a blender, all giving off really high levels of radio frequency, and none of the occupants even knew that it was there. So manufacturers are putting Bluetooth or Wi-Fi capability on almost any device they can. I've seen them on diapers, mirrors, pacifiers, bras, even tampons. Thankfully, this is an area that you have a lot of control over, since the majority of your exposure from these devices is what you're willingly bringing into your home. So let's start with the obvious: Wi-Fi and cell phones. If there's one thing that you take away from today's webinar, let it be this: hardwire your internet, period. There's absolutely no reason that anyone needs to have a wireless internet connection. And in fact, wires work much better than sending the waves through the air. A hardwired connection is faster, it's more reliable, it's more secure, and it's much safer. In fact, it was only a few short years ago that all of our computers were plugged in anyway, and we can still do this today. This really simple act will dramatically reduce your main source of the RF exposure. So until you get that done, I want you to unplug your router or your modem every night before bed, or anytime it's not being used. I promise you will survive. Just unplug it at night, and that's going to be a huge change for you. So next, let's talk about your phone. The best option, of course, is to get rid of your cell phone altogether and use a corded landline. That really is the gold standard. And yes, I know that many of you can't or won't do that. And in that case, there's several other things that you can do. First of all, keep the phone in airplane mode as much as possible. Most of us do not need to be on call 24/7. I personally keep my phone in airplane mode with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi off. That's very important. Don't forget to turn off Bluetooth and Wi-Fi as well. And then I check messages once or twice a day. If you do need to have your phone on more often, then I suggest getting a product like the Shield Your Body phone pouch, the phone shield, or pocket pouch. This will actually cut down the amount of frequency you're exposed to during the day and at night. And I would also seriously consider the AirTube headset that you plug into your phone so you don't have to put the phone directly to your head. Even that much distance is actually a really huge improvement. And the more you can reduce your reliance on your phone, the better off you will be. And for those of you that have to, have the phone on at night, what I recommend is actually put your phone in one of these pouches, like the Shield Your Body pouch, and then make sure, of course, that the shielding side is towards your body. And then I have my clients put the phone in the window so they'll really get good reception. So if the phone rings, you can hear it, but you're shielded on this side. So it's kind of the best of both worlds there. Well, you'll still get your calls, but you'll be shielded from that. So moving on from phones, many of you have probably heard about smart meters. And in some areas of the world, utility companies use these smart meters, which are utility meters that send their data through the air via radio frequency. So if you have one of these meters, you can buy a metal cover to place over it to reduce the radio frequency. But keep in mind, it's not just the main utility meter, but these days it's also the gas and the water meter as well. So I measured high radio frequency on my gas meter recently. And so what I did is I just shielded it with a whole bunch of layers of aluminum foil, and it actually worked very well. I still do get some radio frequency, but the utility or the gas company can still get their reading, but I'm not getting nearly the exposure into my living space as I did before. So the next thing you can do is simply avoid having smart devices in your home. So don't use things like fitness trackers, smart speakers, or purchase appliances with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. I know they seem really cool, but trust me, folks, humans have existed for millennia without them. And you can exist in modern society with less technology. And I personally would argue you exist with much less stress as a result. Of course, a good meter is important to have. Like I mentioned above, you have many devices in your home that you might not even be aware of that have radio frequency. And a good meter will help you identify where these items are so that you can get rid of them or shield them or move them out of the living spaces, especially move them out of the bedroom. If you do find that you're still having high radio frequency sources coming in from outside the home after you've reduced everything inside, then shielding may be necessary. So when you have a high exposure from the outside, usually it's from cell towers. There are many options to shielding. You can paint your walls. There's window film, wallpaper, metal siding, and fabrics. If you decide to choose one of these options, it's recommended to consult with a professional to make sure that you do it properly. But if you want to keep it simple, I recommend the bed canopy that Shield Your Body just came out with. It's been really successful. And that's just, creates kind of a more simple option where you're at least, protecting yourself while you're sleeping. And it's a less expensive option too than shielding the whole house. So, um, like I keep saying, it's all about the bedroom. It's all about when we're sleeping that we really want to block all of these frequencies. However, as we're exposed during the day, there is a bit of a cumulative effect. So we can tolerate more exposure during the day, but you really do want to work on reducing everything in your home because what you're exposed to during the day can actually interfere with your sleep at night. Okay, so let's talk about dirty electricity. And you might be thinking, what does that even mean? So dirty electricity, what we call microsurge electrical pollution, is an altered sine wave. So depending on where you are in the world, your electricity is coming into your home at probably 50 or 60 hertz. So this means that the cycle goes up and down 50 or 60 times a second. And if it was just an electrical wire in your house, your sine wave would be really smooth, kind of like this red one looks like on the screen here. And it would flow really easily. However, we love to plug stuff into our walls. And these days we love to use energy saving devices. So when we have these items plugged into our outlets, it changes the sine wave and causes these microsurges of electric and magnetic fields that come out about 6 to 8 feet into your living space. So dirty electricity doesn't get as much attention really as some of the other fields, but I find actually that among my clients, this field can actually cause the most symptoms, especially among the most electrically hypersensitive people. So the challenge is that DE, dirty electricity, is difficult to measure and mitigate. You can purchase meters like the Graham-Stetzer meter or the green wave meter, which are both good at measuring certain frequencies, and I definitely recommend them. But if you're especially sensitive, then you do want to have an assessment done by a professional that uses something like an oscilloscope or a picoscope. The picture on this slide is my oscilloscope measuring some dirty electricity at a client's home. And you can see on that yellow wave there, these are spikes, and that's dirty electricity in action. So almost all homes have some form of dirty electricity on their wires, simply is just an artifact of living on the grid. So what can you do about it? Well, the best option is to install filters at your main electrical panel. So many people like to use filters like the Graham-Stetzer and the Greenway filters, and I do like these, but I'm not a fan of using them throughout the house. Rather, I suggest having an electrician install 2 new outlets right at your panel box, and then you put 1 or 2 of these filters on each outlet. This is really the most effective way to filter dirty electricity that comes into your house from the outside. Now, the next thing that you should do is unplug anything and everything when it's not being used. So you see we have a common theme here. You'd be amazed at how much dirty electricity certain items put into your air just by being plugged in, even when they're not on. So if you're not using it, unplug it. And I strongly suggest that you get rid of any dimmer switches in your home. These are one of the main contributors to dirty electricity. And it really only takes an electrician a few minutes to switch them out, and it's really it's well worth it. So if you need ambiance, use candles or something like that. But I also suggest going back to good old incandescent light bulbs. They are the safest by far. I want you to avoid LED and compact fluorescent or CFL light bulbs, as they contribute to both dirty electricity and radio frequency. They can be really high. So, just the simple act of switching out your light bulbs can be really profound. So I also recommend avoiding solar panels. And I know this is a hard one to swallow. I'm all for green energy, but the fact is that solar just adds too much dirty electricity to your home's wiring. It's better to be conservative with your electric usage. But if you do already have solar panels, then I suggest filtering it. There are some more heavy-duty filters on the market that can reduce your dirty electricity from solar if you already have them installed. And lastly, turning off your breakers at night can dramatically reduce the dirty electricity in your bedroom. So we already talked about this for electric fields. And so here's yet another reason to de-energize your bedroom. It's really that important. Okay, so let's talk about static electricity for just a moment. This field hardly gets any attention, but it contributes to the EMF load more than you'd think. And thankfully, this is one that we have a lot more control over and that we can easily mitigate. So the best way to reduce static electricity is to minimize your use of synthetic materials. As an added bonus, this improves your air quality as well. In areas of your home, but especially in your bedroom, focus on natural materials. Think cotton, bamboo, linen, silk, wool. You can easily find natural bedding material. For flooring, I strongly recommend avoiding wall-to-wall carpet, but you can find wool throw rugs or even natural grasses like sisal and jute. And if you must have it, you can find wall-to-wall carpet made from wool, which is a much better option than the petroleum-based carpet you find in most places. Finally, try and get a mattress that does not have any metal in it. You want a wooden frame, no box springs. There's actually no need for a box spring, and a mattress without coils or springs. So over time, the action of getting in and out of that bed can actually magnetize the metal and cause the metal to act like an antenna. So when this happens, it will attract and magnify whatever EMFs are present. So you should really go for natural materials all the way around in the bedroom. Now, an easy way to measure this is to get a compass, and you can get a compass with one of the long strings on it for, $5 maybe. And you find out where north is, and you set the dial to north, and then you put the compass on the bed, and you slowly move the string from one side of the bed to the other side. And if there's a deviation off of north by 5 to 10 degrees, then you actually know that your bed has been magnetized. And you would want to really consider getting a bed without any metal in it. All right, now, finally, my favorite subject, blue light. And yes, this does actually qualify as an EMF because all EMFs are actually forms of light. So this is my favorite thing to talk about because once I figured out how much blue light was contributing to my insomnia and I finally addressed it, it completely changed my life. And I know that might sound dramatic, but I mean, it was dramatic. So like most of us, I used to have all the lights on in my house at night. I used to watch TV or look at my computer well after dark, and I would read with the light on before bed. And then I would lay there for 3, 4, 5 hours, unable to fall asleep. I'd even get flashes of bright light behind my eyelids when I closed my eyes. But once I started to research how significantly light affects the human body, I began to lower or turn off the lights at night. And I started wearing blue light blocking glasses around 7 or 8 p.m. And wow, did that change everything. Once I started doing this, I began to fall asleep within 5 to 10 minutes of laying down. It was a complete game changer for me. So the reason why this happens is because when your eyes get blue light on them, which is the predominant color in artificial light, then the brain thinks it's daytime. So your body suppresses melatonin when it's exposed to that light. And of course, melatonin is the hormone that we need to aid in sleep. And when we don't release melatonin and your body is really alert, of course you can't fall asleep. So this is such an easy thing to remedy. First of all, you just turn off the lights you don't need. Most of us like to have all the lights on in our house, but this is completely unnecessary. Second, if you must have lights on, use orange bulbs. They filter out the blue light and create a much better ambiance. And thirdly, I strongly recommend blue light blocking glasses for further protection. There are numerous options out there today. I personally like the Twilights from True Dark. I have a coupon code on my website if you want to check them out. I also have a friend that hand tints prescription glasses so you can have them on your own frames. There's many options available, and I highly recommend minimizing your own light exposure at night if you want to optimize your sleep. Okay, so that was all of the fields, and I realized that that was a whole lot of information in a very short amount of time. So I just want to do a quick recap of what we've talked about here so far. So first of all, we all should have a meter so that we know what's going on in our own environment, and we should test at regular intervals to make sure things haven't changed. For electric fields, the main takeaways are: minimize your electric fields by unplugging anything and everything not being used. Don't spend time near walls or near cords. Install a kill switch or a remote cutoff switch for your bedroom circuit. Remove all electronics in the bedroom and shield with a bed canopy or paint or other fabrics if needed. For magnetic fields, there are similar strategies. Unplug anything and everything not being used. Identify where magnetic fields are and place furniture and beds as far away as possible. Limit the use of things with variable speeds like toothbrushes, hair dryers, electric razors, and blenders. No electronics in the bedroom. Use a battery-powered alarm clock if needed. And have a professional assessment done to make sure you don't have net current anywhere, nor high fields from power lines. To minimize radio frequency, again, no electronics in the bedroom, hardwire your internet, or at a bare minimum, unplug it at night. You could also put the router in a Faraday cage. You want no cell phones in the bedroom. If it is your alarm, actually you can use it if and only if you put it in airplane mode with the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth off and the screen dimmed. I'm not a fan of fitness or sleep trackers. Avoid wireless or smart devices throughout the house. Shield your items if necessary, and consider a bed canopy if needed. For dirty electricity, measure to see what your levels are. Unplug anything and everything not being used. Use a kill switch or remote cutoff switch to de-energize breakers at night to the bedroom. Avoid CFL and LED light bulbs at all costs. Replace dimmer switches and avoid things like solar panels and pool pumps if possible. Reduce static electricity by bringing only natural materials into the home, especially in the bedroom. And this does, count for clothing as well. Clothing can cause quite a bit of static electricity too. So really focus on those natural materials. And then finally, reduce your blue light exposure at night by turning off lights, using orange light bulbs, wear blue light blocking glasses at night, and put your phones or computers into night mode. I recommend the software Iris for that. So in short, we want to get back to nature as much as possible. And this starts by reducing the man-made EMF in the bedroom. Now, I realize you may not be able to do all of these things right away, and that is okay. Just do what steps you can now and work on them little by little. Eventually, you will have that sleeping sanctuary that you deserve. And I guarantee you will sleep better, feel better, and enjoy life on a whole nother level. These small steps are so very worth it. Okay, so I know we have a ton of questions, and as promised, I'll be doing a Q&A session here in a moment. But before we get to that, I know that R has something he would like to discuss. So R, I will send it back to you.
Thank you so much, Cathy. That was really great. And I know all the participants are really happy and appreciate having the opportunity to learn all of this important information from an expert like you. And that actually brings me to the special announcement that I told all of you would be coming during this webinar. Because on today's webinar, I really do have a unique announcement to make for all of you. So here at SYB, for years, I get a lot of questions from people like you, and it makes sense because EMF can be really complicated. And at SYB, we know a lot about it. And I make it really easy for people to contact me and my growing customer support team, and to contact us directly with questions. But as SYB has grown, it's become harder and harder to keep up with all of these questions. There are some days when I get emails from over 100 of you, and I still try to answer all of them, but some days that gets really hard. And what's more, while some of the questions I get I can answer by email, over time, I've seen a growing number of questions require more involvement, more information, more back and forth, and that just can't happen over a quick email. So as the volume of these questions grew this year in particular, I spent a lot of time thinking about how I and SYB could try to address this. How could I help get all of you answers to all of your very important questions, even the complicated and involved ones, because there really are just only so many hours in a day. Now, it turns out that the Building Biology Institute, which Cathy has told you about now in the past 2 webinars, has a roster of certified specialists in EMF radiation. And what I really love about this program in particular is that it's really focused on how EMF applies to our homes and offices, to where we live, where we spend our time. They aren't just experts in EMF, but experts in how EMF impacts our health and quality of life. These people are trained experts in precisely the types of questions I get every day. But then I realized there's no easy way for people like you to communicate with these experts. And most people don't live near where these experts are. So in-home consultations are really impractical. And given everything that's happening in 2020, there's some reasonable hesitation to have strangers come into our homes. So there's a gap. A lot of people have a lot of questions, and there are a few people who have the expertise to deep dive into the answers. But there's no easy way to connect the people with the experts until now, because I kept thinking about this problem, and that's when I decided to launch SYB remote EMF consulting services. It's a great new way for people like you to connect with certified EMF experts to get all of your questions about EMF answered. And that's what we're launching here today, right now. You are literally the first people in the world to learn about this. So with SYB remote consulting, you can book time easily and instantly to get personalized advice and detailed answers about EMF from a certified EMF expert from the comfort of your own home using Zoom or your phone on your own schedule, and you get a recording of your session afterwards. So you have all of the information that was covered. You have a recording of it for future reference. This is so brand new that all of you on this webinar you're not only just the first people to learn about it, you can't even find it on my website yet. We wanted really to launch it just for you, those of you here in the room today. And I am super pleased to announce that our first SYB EMF consultant expert is Cathy.
Yay.
Yeah. Cathy doesn't need an introduction because you've just heard from her. You know how deeply informed she is and how much she cares about these issues. She's a certified building biologist and also certified by the Building Biology Institute as an EMF specialist. She's also a board certified holistic nutritionist with the National Association of Nutrition Professionals. She assesses buildings for anything that may be causing health problems, including EMF exposure, as well as indoor air quality, mold, chemical off-gassing, and ventilation. Combining building biology and holistic nutrition, she addresses both the body and environment to help her clients achieve optimal health. And on top of all of that, she's also an experienced advocate for EMF and health as the founder of Idahoans for Safe Technology, an advocacy and awareness group for the safer use of modern day communications. I couldn't be happier to launch our new EMF consulting services with Cathy as our first and premier expert consultant. And to help celebrate this announcement, I have a special offer for all of you attending live today. If you book your consulting session today before midnight Pacific time, you can save 20% on your order by entering the code CONSULT20 at checkout. So remember, you can book consulting anytime, but this code will only work today. It's only for those of you attending this session live. If you're watching this as a recording, this code will not work. And you'll also need the link that you see here on the screen, shieldyourbody.com/consult, because that's the only way you can access this page. We'll be launching it on our site to more people next week, but you'll need this direct link to book it today. And so with that, I'm going to hand things back over to Cathy for your Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, R. I'm so excited about your big announcement. I'm so excited, looking forward to connecting with your awesome community. So this is going to be really fun.
Thank you so much, Cathy. This type of service is almost impossible to find. We've made it really easy for people, and we made it easy for people to contact one of the leading experts. And so I'm really excited about this new program, the consulting program. So how would you like to begin the Q&A? Would you like to get into some of the questions that were posted in the room first, or some of the questions that were submitted in advance? Which would you like?
Yeah, let's do some of the questions that are here in the room, and then we'll kind of switch back and forth here and try to get to as many as possible, because I know there's quite a few. So it looks like, let's see, we've got Veronica here asked, how bad is it to have a small freezer in the bedroom? And Paul G answered, Good response, Paul G. Not a good idea. Best to turn off the electricity at the panel to the bedrooms before going to sleep. Yep, I absolutely agree with that. And then Anya says, I have a bed canopy, but what about the walls and windows, please? Yeah, so Anya, if you have a bed canopy, then you don't necessarily need to worry about the walls and the windows when you're in the bed canopy, right? Because you're in the canopy, you're completely protected underneath that canopy. When you're not in the canopy, however, the walls and windows, you may be getting some radio frequency that way, but really we don't know without measuring. If you wanted to shield the walls and the windows, however, you can get window cling for the walls. You can also use aluminum window screen, and I recommend that because it's pretty inexpensive and easy to apply. So you can go to like a Home Depot or a Lowe's and buy window screen, aluminum window screen on a roll, and make a frame that you can put in the windows, even for the windows that don't open. And that's an inexpensive way to do it. The window cling also works well too, but then when you open the window, you got to kind of think about that because you're kind of breaking that seal. And the walls, there's paint, there's shielding fabric, there's foil that you can put up, there's aluminum siding. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But if you're going to go down that route, you absolutely want to have a meter. And I do suggest consulting with someone about that level of shielding, because there's questions about whether or not you should ground it. You need to get the ceiling, the floor. It gets a little bit tricky. And so you got to test before and after to make sure that you did it properly and that the levels actually did decrease. Okay. And then another question from Anya. I'm looking for the best shielding fabrics, materials, paints to EMF, Wi-Fi, and 5G proof the bedroom. Yeah, so basically what I was just saying, the 5G is a little bit tricky because we don't know yet the exact frequencies that will be used over time. So right now we're going up to about 28 gigahertz or so, and the paints have been tested for that, and they do very well. And I know the shielding fabrics do very well for that too. So it is a good way to paint. There's multiple different paints. The Y Shield is great. Turtle brand is very good. There's some other paints that work really well too. And then most of the fabrics work really well against 5G. So, the only issue there is we still don't quite yet know the extent of what 5G will be because it's evolving. But right now, the most common fabrics and paints that you will find are effective. Okay, Lisa says, I use a Swiss Shield Naturel canopy. Will that shield 5G? Yeah, so Lisa, just like I was saying, we think so. It's, again, 5G is still evolving. But right now, yes, it is shielding those higher frequencies. And here's what you guys need to know about 5G. So we get questions, I get questions about 5G constantly, but this is what the public doesn't really understand. How 5G works is it works in conjunction with 4G. So, and when we say 4G, we're talking about those lower waves. And 5G, we're talking about millimeter waves. In actuality, it's both. 5G has all of the waves because the millimeter waves cannot work without those lower waves. Now, when you have a 5G antenna somewhere near you, it is not giving off these radio waves constantly like a 4G antenna does. When you see a 4G antenna on a cell tower somewhere, that is constantly emitting all the time. It's just blanketing out into the atmosphere. The millimeter waves on the 5G antennas, however, are on demand only. So that means that they are not broadcasting unless you have a device that calls for it to then send the signal out. And it also emits in a beam. It's beam forming. So it doesn't splay out all of this radio frequency everywhere, but rather it's in a beam that goes directly to the device. So if you have a 5G antenna near you, you most likely will be getting those frequencies from the quote unquote 4G levels, which we know all of our shielding materials work against. But the 5G is so much more nuanced because it's on demand and it's beamforming. So in that regard, I think, you know, some of our anxiety can be reduced by that because we're not just getting blasted with it all the time like a lot of us think we are. And you know, this causes me anxiety too. It causes a lot of us a lot of anxiety. But our shielding fabrics, our paints and materials like that, I'm pretty confident that they work very well because of this beamforming technology and on-demand technology, because we're not going to be exposed to it 24/7 like we are the lower fields, of which our materials work against. Okay, Sid, looking for the best thing to shield 5G. I live in condos that are stacked. Yeah, so same thing that I was just talking about. You know, any of the materials that we have now are going to be really effective. Again, who knows what's going to happen off in the future, years from now. But you know, it's all developing. But right now, all of the things that we're doing to shield work well. And I understand, Sid, that you know, you have condos, that's tough. That makes your exposure, you know, it's a little bit more densified, so your exposure can be a little bit higher. But those paints, the shielding fabrics, the canopies, they work. Okay, Eileen, how does high humidity rain influence EMF? Great question. So I don't know that it really is going to make a huge difference, honestly. Most things, trees, building materials, will actually decrease. It will block radio frequency to some degree. Rain, maybe a little bit, but not a ton. But if you're talking about magnetic fields or electric fields or dirty electricity, it doesn't necessarily have a huge enough impact that it's going to change what we're already doing. Now, if the ground is wet, we can get better conduction for grounding. If we are grounding ourselves with a ground rod out in the earth, that moist soil can actually help with that. But otherwise, rain, humidity, you know, pretty minimal. Not really going to do a whole lot. Before we go on, do we want to jump to some of the questions that were pre-submitted and we can
Sure.
answer
Yeah.
some?
Yeah, please. Do you want to pick them, or do you want me to read them to you? Or
yeah, why don't you go ahead and read me?
okay, let me find them. Okay.
Well, I'll just
So
go
can
on.
roof-mounted? Oh, can you hear me?
Yep, got it.
Yep. Can roof-mounted solar panels be a significant source of EMF inside the bedroom? And if so, what impact might they impose on people who work nights and sleep during the day when the panels are at peak performance?
Yes, great question. So with solar panels, the main concern is their effect on dirty electricity. So you have this DC to AC conversion, which creates quite a bit of noise on our wires, and it's that dirty electricity component. You are correct in your thinking that when it's dark and those solar panels aren't active because it's dark out, that your dirty electricity is actually decreased. So if you are sleeping during the day, yes, your levels to that dirty electricity will be higher. Now, there can be some magnetic fields on the roof mounted panels as well if you are very close to them. Impossible to say without measuring. But, I mean, I can pretty confidently say that you're getting a lot of dirty electricity. And, you know, I mean, unfortunately, the dirty electricity is one of the fields that seems to be most biologically active, at least among my clients that are really sensitive. The dirty electricity seems to be one of the bigger culprits. Now you can filter it, and I did mention that there's some of these more heavy duty filters that are beyond kind of the green wave or the Graham-Stetzer filters. Those do actually work well, but there's a couple other filters like a DNA RX filter and a sign tamer filter. If you're really sensitive, actually doing both of those, we think is the most effective. And I say we think because we're really all still working this out. I've been digging really deep with some of my colleagues over the course of the past few months to test. We've been testing all of these filters on different panels to see what gives us the best results. We're still working that out because there's so many variables. But so far, using both of those DNA filter and sign tamer filter seem to give some pretty good reduction. Now that is going to cost you several $1,000s, unfortunately. It's kind of the way it is. So, you can filter it, but it will definitely impact you as you are sleeping, when we've got those high peaks during the day with the sun exposure.
Thank you. So here's one. I like it because it gets into the question of distance a bit more. So our neighbors are welcoming their smart meter, but it's only 20 feet from our bedroom. We will be opting out and paying the fee. Will 20 feet be far enough to lessen the radiation?
Okay, so all quote unquote smart meters emit different frequencies. It kind of depends on what brand you have, how it's configured, how the guy who comes over and configures it sets it up. So there's a lot of different variables, but 20 feet is pretty close. Is that enough distance? Of course, we don't know without measuring, but if that were me, I would want to cover your neighbor's meter. I would want to put a shield on that meter so that it's not coming into your house, right? And I mean, most of the time, neighbors are pretty open to this. You can buy it. You can buy it and ask them, hey, can I put this on your meter? Usually they don't have a problem with it because it doesn't impact them at all. It does absolutely nothing to impact them. Now, if they're not open to it, one thing that I have done with many clients, and this has been really, really successful, is if you have a fence, you can shield the fence, or you can put up some kind of fence. It can be decorative. It can look really cool. And then we put some of that like aluminum window siding or aluminum window screen on the fence. And then it'll block it from coming into your house. So that can be an easy solution if your neighbor's not open to you putting a cover on their meter.
That's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that. There's a quick one here. I'll just jump in to answer it. It says, I see the material protection on the 4 sides of the bed. However, what about the area under the bed? I imagine they're talking about the canopy. And I don't know about the other brands. And the SYB one is actually out of stock right now. But just to answer from the SYB one, the SYB canopy includes floor mats. So it gives you the full enclosure of shielding. Let's maybe just ask. Wow, some of these are. Do you want to? Well, okay. So this one, I like this one. We get some version of this one a lot. So let me read this one to you, and then we can go back to the questions live in the room. But the reason this one we get a lot is because it's about smart meters in an apartment building. And the issue, I'm sure that comes up is that there's a bunch of them installed in one place. So the electric company just installed smart meters on the 300 plus apartments in my development. 2 are 20 feet from my front windows. 4 are about 35 feet diagonal to them. Is the emitted pulse unidirectional out towards the road or multi-direction? So what is there a standard of in which direction these things are bouncing? Do I need extra extra protection now that the smart meters? So basically getting into the impact of multiple smart meters because they're in an apartment coming from multiple directions. Is there a way for them to know which direction the signals are going? And what can they do about it?
Oh, yeah, that's really tricky. So, the best way, the best way to do that is to use a directional meter. This is an antenna that I have that I attached to one of my meters, and it's directional, so I can help to identify how the direction is being affected. But short of that, there's also deflection, and no matter where the signal is coming out of that meter, the chances of it hitting a window and bouncing and deflecting into different directions is pretty high. So if you've got them that close and they're at an angle from you and somewhere in front of you, I mean, the chances are that you're getting some of that radio frequency is pretty high. I would say, of course, we don't know without measuring, and that's why a meter is so good to have. But I would suspect that it's likely that you are getting exposed by those. In which case, that it makes it so tough when you're living in an apartment because it's very little under your control. And in that case, I would say that shielding is going to be, your best option in that case.
So I know I said we'd go back to the room after that, but that segues very nicely into another question here that someone submitted in advance, which I personally would love to hear your answer to. For most people, buying an EMF protection device requires a leap of faith. What questions need to be answered before making an informed purchase?
Awesome question. So protection devices, I'm assuming we're thinking about harmonizers, chips, pendants, stickers.
I think the question is probably about everything that would be under EMF protection. So harmonizers as well as shielding and so forth. So how do you evaluate?
Okay. So let's break that down. So if we're talking about shielding products, they work completely different than, protection devices from things like necklaces and chips and pendants and things. And that's a very important distinction because shielding products work by blocking the, fields, whatever field that we're talking about, or filtering it. And I can measure those with my meter and I can see a noticeable difference. So I know scientifically what has changed. And, that's all I need to know because my meters have demonstrated that we have effectively blocked or not blocked whatever the field is. Now, as far as how to choose those materials, you really got to, you got to know who you're buying it from and respect the company. You have to have faith in the company, right? Shield Your Body, of course, excellent company that I have all the faith in the world in, and they release all of their testing. They're very transparent about their testing, and that's really important. Some other companies like Less EMF or Safe Living Technologies, those are the three main companies I use. I know all of the people that own the companies. I talk with them frequently. I know the testing that they do. I know the materials that they use. I have 100% faith in them, and that's where I buy my materials from. Now, when it comes, so beyond that, other companies, things that you find online, if you go to Amazon and you're looking for some shielding cloth and it's some random company, I don't know. I don't know about them. I just avoid them. I have the three companies I use, and that's all I need. So when it comes to harmonizers, chips, pendants, all of these things that are going to protect you, but it's just a device, that you put somewhere and it claims to change the frequencies of your body. It changes it harmonizes all of the, EMFs that are in the air to make it more biocompatible with your body. So far, I don't have any of these devices that I recommend. That's not to say that they don't work, but they do nothing to change my meters. So if you've got a necklace on, and people ask me this all the time, just check this sticker I put on my phone. It doesn't change my meter at all. And that's not what it's intended to do. The frequencies are still there. And the companies say, well, those frequencies will still be there, but now they're biocompatible with your body, so it's not a problem for you. I don't have any scientific way to measure that. I'm still waiting to have some solid, really scientific proof from the companies. I'm open to it. I think it'd be great if we could all wear a necklace and it would protect us. I am all for that. That would be awesome. But I don't know of those devices yet. So you're exactly right. It does take a leap of faith. And it's kind of a buyer beware situation. So if you want to spend the money on these things to test them, by all means do so. I have multiple clients where they say, well, I tried this necklace, it did nothing for me. But another client said, oh, I tried that necklace too, and I feel way better. So it's not even consistent across the board. A lot of it depends on what, your personal biochemistry. So unfortunately, there just isn't one yet that I could recommend or that I have faith in. But I'm certainly not opposed to people trying them.
Great detailed answer. Thank you. Do you want to jump back into the room questions?
Yes. Okay. Seema asked a question which she said we've already addressed. Okay. And Eileen asked, will there be a replay of this presentation? Yes. And you will get, if you registered for the presentation, you will get an email with that link. So Angela says, is it better to shield whole bedroom with wallpaper or Y shields paint or use a canopy? Is the Schumann resonance protected? That's a fantastic question, Angela. So I do actually use caution in recommending shielding an entire bedroom, partially because I don't want to shield the Schumann resonance. So for those of you not familiar, the Schumann resonance is the Earth's own electromagnetic field. And I believe it resonates at 7.83 hertz. It does change a little bit. But that Schumann resonance is what we have evolved with. And when you hear people talking about grounding and earthing or walking barefoot outside, this is why we do that, because we want to be in contact with this Schumann resonance because it offers a lot of protection to the body. So I do feel like there is a little bit of risk in completely shielding your whole home, because then you are blocking the Schumann resonance. You're at least blocking the electric portion of the Schumann resonance, maybe not the magnetic field, but that is a consideration for sure. So hey, it's a little tricky to answer the question. Is it better to shield the whole bedroom or use a canopy? This kind of gets down to the personal situation. So, I have clients that are so unbelievably sensitive that they have to shield the entire bedroom. And that's just the only way that they can live in the world. They're that sensitive. Now, a canopy really is going to do the same thing. It is shielding the entire area. So it's going to have the same effect of blocking that Schumann resonance, but it won't be there when you're out of the canopy, obviously. So the canopy the benefits are it's much cheaper, it's easy and effective, and you can remove it. Now, shielding with paint or wallpaper, the benefits are that you're getting more shielding, and you can, you don't have to be under the canopy, so you're going to be shielded all the time when you're in the home. But when you apply it, if you decide that you don't like it, because occasionally there are people that don't feel well with it for various reasons, then it's very difficult to remove. It's kind of like at that point you have to remove the drywall, or rip the wallpaper off. So there's benefits, advantages and disadvantages to each, and it really kind of depends on what resonates with you and how much protection you feel you need and what your budget is and how much you want to invest in it. So I wish there was a more simple answer to that question, but it's the nature of the beast. Okay. Kim says, what does the Safe and Sound Pro meter measure? The same as the Classic? Oh, yeah. Sorry, Kim, if I didn't answer that clearly. Yes, the Safe and Sound Pro measures radio frequency. The difference between the two is the Safe and Sound Classic. It's really small and it just has 3 lights on it. So it tells you if it's the safe level, if you're in like approaching a higher level, or if it's red, if it's a very extreme level. So it's easy to use for people that don't want to have to deal with numbers. So they can just use it and say, oh, this level is safe. or, this area is safe and that area is much higher. So it can help you kind of, just make the best decisions about the area that you're in. The Safe and Sound Pro actually has the numbers, and it will actually tell you the exact measurements in microwatts per square meter. So if you want to, really know what's going on and know what the actual frequencies are, or the level of those frequencies, the Safe and Sound Pro will tell you exactly how much exposure you're getting, and it can help you narrow down a little bit more about maybe where they're coming from, what your levels are over time, how it's fluctuating, and that kind of thing. So it's just an advanced meter for those that really want to dig into it and learn a little bit more on how to use them. Both really excellent. So it just depends on if you want a really, really simple, quick and easy thing, or if you want to get a little bit more in depth with it. Okay, Anya says, can you please email a link to this webinar? Yes, I believe that will be coming. And Kim says, how or where can I find a building biologist in my area? Excellent question, Kim. You can go to the building biologist website and type in find an expert, or there's a link right at the top of the website that says find an expert, and you can find someone that way. If you have time and you want to mention what area of the country you live, I might be able to help you with that too, because I know a lot of them throughout the country.
Yeah, or Kim can engage with your services now through Shield Your Body. So let's
of course,
that.
of course.
But I did post the link to the Building Biology Institute. Find an expert for Kim.
Great. Okay, Irene says, what about CPAPs? Oh, goodness, Irene.
Oh, and actually, if I can throw a little twist on that one, because we get a question and sometimes too, people asking about using a CPAP inside of a canopy.
Yeah, okay. Oh, boy. That's a really tough one because, so I've measured numerous CPAPs lately, and almost all of them are giving off radio frequency. If it's a newer machine, because it, likes to have the ability to connect to your phone so you can control it from your phone, or send data to your phone about your sleeping habits and these kinds of things. So some of them you can get in and disable that radio frequency. Some of them you can't. And you should know that many things like your printers and your TVs, Apple TVs, things like this, I've measured this numerous times. You go in there and you disable the radio frequency signal, or you tell it that you're hardwired, but it still emits. So it's impossible to know without having a meter to measure that, unfortunately. So with the CPAP, if you can disable that radio frequency, excellent. I would definitely do so. However, I measure high electric fields and sometimes magnetic fields on the hoses themselves near the breathing apparatus. And so if you're using that in a canopy, you do have the potential to create higher fields that way.
Yeah.
Especially the hose is going to have to kind of snake under I guess it can go through the slit, but it's probably touching the canopy, in which case I don't think that's a great idea. The problem is you have to sleep and we want you to sleep. So what I usually tell customers is, if you can't sleep without the CPAP, then you have to use it. But I would suggest, and I mentioned this, I think, in the previous webinar, because there's a similar question. If you have the possibility to dig a little bit deeper into why you're not sleeping and why you're not breathing well at night, I would do that. And sometimes, I talked about this, we have narrow palates, and that creates a lot of issues why people can't sleep. And there's actually palate expansion that you can use that can really open up that palate and help with breathing. There's, of course, weight issues and dietary things that cause sleeping issues at night. So there's a lot you can look into if you haven't already. But if you can't sleep without a CPAP, then you have to use the CPAP. And I probably would not use it under a canopy for those reasons.
Great answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to go back to some of those?
Oh, sure. Let's see. I should have been scanning while you were. Um,
Okay.
okay, this is. I think you addressed some of this in your talk, but how can I protect my bedroom without painting or a bed canopy? So,
Mhm.
what are if you could? I know, like I said, you covered some of this in the talk, but if you could just summarize, how the approach someone really needs to take in terms of protecting themselves in their bedroom without buying equipment,
Yeah.
except perhaps a meter. I think you would say that that's pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah. Meter's important. The things I said about having no electronics in the bedroom, that's the place to start, because uh, I just can't stress enough, like, how many devices that you may have that have a radio frequency on them and you don't even know it. So just removing all of those electronics from the bedroom is a great place to start. And that's going to cut down on all the fields, all four fields. You get electronics out of the bedroom, and that's going to help tremendously, as well as turning off those breakers at night. That's going to, I mean, those two things right there help exponentially. And really, the large majority of our exposure, like I've mentioned, is stuff that we're bringing into our house, not so much what's coming from the outside. Turning off the Wi-Fi router at night, absolute must. And just really minimizing your own exposure of what's inside your house. Now, like I said, if you have to absolutely, have to shield because of something that's coming in from the outside, like I said, the aluminum window screen, things like that, that's going to be relatively inexpensive way to shield without really investing hardcore in the window film or the paint. That's a big job. It's expensive. You have to do it right. But I even have clients that will take that aluminum window screen and make a panel out of it. So they'll just get, little pieces of wood, and they will attach it and just make a big screen. And you can just put that against your wall, and it's movable. You can move it around. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it, but it's a less expensive investment, and a cheaper, easier way to do it, and it can work really effectively.
Thank you. There's one here, another one this one I really like. When a TV is turned off, does it still emit EMF? And
Huh.
and the reason I like that question is because I get that question all the time about any number of different devices. So yeah, if you could
Yeah.
take a stab at it, please.
Awesome question. And unfortunately, the answer is yes. It will still give off radio frequency. Now, it depends. It depends on the TV. But the newer the model, the more likely it is to still be emitting, whether it is on or not. And so the only solution is to unplug it, which isn't, that's an easy solution. So if you have a TV and you don't have a meter and you're not sure, just unplug it, and that will solve the issue. Um, what I find to be the bigger issue are the things like the Rokus, the Fire Sticks, the Apple TVs, these little boxes that we attach to the TV. Those are emitting constantly, no matter what, even when you wire them. Now, the older versions, you could disable that radio frequency. The newer versions, you can't. So even if it's off, even if you've told your TV, I'm using a hardwired connection, it is still emitting. So what I recommend that people do is 100% unplug them when they're not being used. When they are being used, I put shielding cloth over it. So you can, purchase shielding cloth, or, even, Shield Your Body has the blankets and that kind of thing. I just put that right over the box, and it doesn't eliminate the radio frequency completely, but it drops it by a good 95, 96%. So if you have to watch the TV and that's your only option, just shield those boxes. You can't really shield the TV, but I do have a colleague that he's an electrical engineer, and he will actually open people's TVs up to remove that antenna. So you can do that. I mean, I don't do that personally. You have to find someone that really knows what they're doing in order to not bust the TV. But if you really, really want to get in there and remove that antenna, you could potentially open up the TV to do that. Otherwise, unplug it.
So I'm just looking through some of these questions. I think you got to a lot of them. One, maybe you touched on this. I don't recall though. There's an air conditioning unit outside this person's bedroom, and there's a metal frame and bed springs. So I think the question is about how air conditioning as a source of EMF.
Yeah. Impossible to know on that one without having a meter on it. You know, air conditioners can sometimes have current on them, and I mean, that takes like a clamp meter that you clamp around it. That's where you get into kind of having a professional assessment. But in general, if it's not right next to you, not right next to the bedroom, it really shouldn't be that much of an issue. It might put a little dirty electricity on your line, but I don't find air conditioning to be a major issue across the board. On average, they're not a big deal. I mean, if you're right on the other side of it, I would, move your bed to another location, because it will have some magnetic field potentially right on it, but it will drop off pretty readily with distance. So yeah, I just distance with the air conditioning is what's important, not really a huge issue. As far as the metal in your bed goes, just as you're able, just switch that out with non-metal. That's the best option.
Thank you. So, I mean, maybe go back into the questions here in the room, and we can maybe answer 2 or 3 more of them.
Great. Okay. So Irene says I have 8 smart meters on the outside of the bedroom. Yeah. So that's kind of, well, let's see. It's outside of your bedroom wall. Okay. So this is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you use foil? Okay. So the 8 smart meters on the outside of your bedroom wall. What I would do, honestly, is well, first of all, you're not going to put your bed against that wall where they are, right? You want your bed as far away from that as possible. The second thing, I'm trying to minimize my screen here. I've got a link that I wanted to put. I don't know if I can do that. You can buy a shielding kit from Less EMF. I was going to put a link in there for you. That actually is specifically designed to shield smart meters. So it's a thick piece of metal that will help to block the radio frequency as well as the electric and maybe magnetic field. It's a little bit trickier, but so you put that on the wall to shield the meter panel on the other side. And that's actually what I would recommend. I believe it's about $350, I believe, from Less EMF. I'll try to find that link and put it in here if I can get that for you. But yeah, that's what I would do for sure. And in some situations, if you have the option to sleep in another room, make a different room of the home your bedroom, but definitely have the bed as far away from that as possible. And then I would look at one of these shielding kits that Less EMF sells specifically for this reason. And then Eileen says, how do you use foil on the gas meter?
Oh,
yeah.
Was there a comment that sorry, I dismissed the question.
I got it. No worries. I literally took a roll of aluminum foil and wrapped it around a whole bunch of times. And then the panel in the middle where the gas meters here in Idaho and Boise where I live, they make them look like they're analog. So it looks like the old dial, which is tricky. But when you look closely, if you want to know if any of your meters have this radio frequency ability, you look for an FCC ID number. If it has an FCC ID number on it, then it's most likely transmitting wirelessly. It's very, very tiny, so you have to look very, very closely. You could miss it. But mine has that FCC ID number on it. And of course, I got the readings, which is how I figured it out. So I left that panel open, and I put the foil around the panel and created kind of a funnel and kind of directed it away from my home. So that signal will still go out into the street so that the utility company can still get my reading. And then I just wrapped the base of it numerous times in aluminum foil, and it worked. So, and yours, it may or may not have that smart technology.
If I could jump down a little bit further here in the room, Harold asks, shouldn't all EMF protective bed canopies be grounded? If not, why not?
Yeah. Do you want to answer that one,
No,
or do you want me?
if you want me to, I will. But you're
No, well, I know we have a similar opinion on that. And the answer, Harold, is no, they should not all be grounded. But some should. Which, so here's the deal with grounding. A lot of people will recommend, there's grounding sheets, grounding mats, canopies, and they come with the ability to plug right into your outlet to ground them, because you plug them right into the ground of your outlet. And I do not recommend that, because everybody's got some level of dirty electricity in their home, just because we're on the grid, and we have energy saving appliances and computers and things that we plug in that produce more dirty electricity. And if you plug into that dirty electricity, you're actually going to bring that towards you. So the canopy will now have some of that dirty electricity on the canopy. So we, of course, want to avoid that. Now, if you are able to take a stake and put it out into your yard and ground it that way through a window, or somehow, so that you can get that stake outside, that's much preferred. If you want to ground it that way, I'm okay with that. However, in the US, we run all of our current back to the utility company through the earth. So you may be tapping into some current that way. And essentially what we say is, if you ground it and you feel better, awesome, keep grounding it. If you ground it and you feel worse, don't do it. We do like to ground it so that we can dissipate some of that electric field that's coming from the wires in our walls. But that's why, we really want you to turn off the breakers at night so you can eliminate that problem. And if you don't have electric fields in the bedroom because you've turned off your breakers, then there's really no need to ground it. And I would say don't bother. But if for some reason you still do have high electric fields in the bedroom and you want to ground it, I don't do it to the outlet. If you can get a stake to the outside, that's the way I would recommend. And then pay attention to how you feel. You might prefer one method over the other, and your body is the best meter, right? So if you feel better one way or the other, we say go for that.
Great, thank you. And there's one more, if I may, to pull out from this list here. Kim asks, you mentioned some non-electrical items, including tampons and kitty litter boxes, having high frequencies. Is that because those items absorb the frequencies? And the reason I wanted to pull this out is because I think you were talking about these companies making products, quote unquote, smart, that really have no benefit in being smart. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Or
You're correct. And I should have made that more clear. So thanks for that question. No, it's just that they are putting wireless capability in these products. So the kitty litter box, so there's this electronic kitty litter box that you connect to your phone, and it tells you how much your cat is peeing. So the reason why people do that is because a lot of cats will have kidney issues as they get older. And so, cat parents like to monitor this for health reasons. And so this kitty litter box will tell you, how much your cat is going to the bathroom. I think that's, of course, ridiculous, because you're just adding this level of radio frequency to your cat and throughout your house. And I see no reason for that. The tampons.
yeah, that one I got the kitty litter box I knew about. The tampons, I have to admit, took me by surprise.
Well, yeah, and I had to throw that in there because I just want women to understand that,
Yeah.
They exist. And the idea is this company has made these tampons with I think it's Bluetooth.
Oh my God.
So it connects to your phone to tell you when your
God.
tampon is full so that you can change. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, everyone on this call knows, don't do that, please. Don't do that. But there's also like diapers, diapers have these radio frequency signals on it. So it tells the parent when the diaper needs to be changed, or little booties you put on the child. So it tells you the heart rate and the respiration. And of course, we all know here that that's not, we don't want to do that.
Thank you. Yeah. If I could pick one more out of this list, where was it? And it's because we occasionally get questions about this type of product, and we don't really have much information about them. So let me just ask it. I apologize if I'm getting this name wrong. Micheline asks, can you speak to how dangerous it would be to wear a chargeable hearing aid versus the battery ones? Thank you. So and that's a good question. And I would ask more broadly about, different considerations for people who need hearing aids.
Mm-hmm. So when we say chargeable, are we meaning it wirelessly? It has wireless capabilities, I'm going to assume?
Yeah, I'm assuming that as well. Yes, because that's what we tend to get a lot of more questions about. Yeah.
Boy, I think it's a bad idea. It's exponentially increasing that radio frequency right to your brain. So I'm just not a fan of it at all. I mean, the whole way that I got into this field was, one, because I was having insomnia, and two, I had very, very severe tinnitus ringing in the ears for over a decade. And when I stopped using my phone, that tinnitus went away in 3 days and has never come back.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, it took that experience, which was so obviously conclusive, that I said, I got to know everything there is to know about this. So clearly it affected my hearing right next to my brain. So yeah, I don't like any kind of Wi-Fi Bluetooth capability on hearing aids at all, because you can't get closer to your brain than that. So not a good idea.
Thank you. So I know I said just a couple more questions, but I'm scanning this list. I keep seeing ones I thought, oh, that would be really good to answer. So that if you have a couple minutes here,
Sure.
Raymond asks, and this one, I just think it's a really important concept to cover. So Raymond asks, I've painted the bedroom with shielding paint. Someone mentioned to me that there could be a problem with EMFs generated inside of the bedroom and not getting out and creating a Faraday effect. Is this a problem?
100%. Yep. So if this isn't the other consideration that people need to be aware of, if you're going to decide to shield your home and you're going to go to the levels of painting and fabrics and foil and window cling and all of this stuff, you have to commit to a 100% radio frequency free home. That means no phones, no Wi-Fi, no smart speakers, no Bluetooth, nothing. Because you have created this box, and now you bring a device into it, and it's going to bounce off of those walls back at you and really amplify those radio frequencies. So, yep, if you're going to shield like that, you got to hardwire everything, and no cordless phones, none of that stuff inside, because you're going to make the situation worse.
Thank you. I'm really glad that Raymond asked, because we get that question a lot, and even with the canopy, we tell people just don't use anything inside of it. Don't bring a phone inside of it. We talked about don't bring the CPAP inside of it. It's a part of the product niche of EMF shielding. It's a really important consideration that people, and it's not even just the whole home shielding. It's also, even if you're using a product like my pocket patch or phone pouch, you really need the shielded side between the phone and your body. Otherwise, it's going to be counterproductive. So thank you very much for getting into that. So we're getting up close to 2 hours here, and you've been super generous with your time. And there's still a huge number of questions. They keep coming in, and there were almost 100 submitted in advance of today's webinar. Wow. It was a pretty overwhelming response, and I think that really goes to show how important a service it is that you are now going to be offering through SYB. And so just a reminder to everyone in the room that this code, consult20, that works until midnight tonight Pacific time, at which point it'll expire. But you can still use the consulting services, book the consulting services whenever you want. But if you want to save 20%, this is you have to make your booking before midnight tonight Pacific time. And I think, again, just the quantity and complexity of some of the questions that we're getting really shows why I am so excited to finally be offering a solution for people who can quickly, easily, conveniently get answers to these questions, and dive into detail when necessary. So you can book sessions you can start at 20 minutes, or you can book longer sessions than that, depending on how complex an issue you need solved. So, Cathy, thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. And thank you. I'm really excited to have you on board SYB as our first EMF consultant.
Me too, R. I'm so happy that we connected and we made this work. I think we're going to bring a lot of value to your customers and help to clear up this incredibly confusing and difficult topic. So yeah, so happy to be on board, and I can't wait to connect with your community.
Thank you. Again, really appreciate it. And everyone in the room, you'll get an email with a link to view the archive as soon as the recording's done. That usually takes about 10-15 minutes. So you can watch, you can share this with others. And thank you. I mean, this was a huge turnout. There's still a huge number of people in the room right now. So thank you all for making time to turn out and to stay in the webinar almost the full 2 hours that we've gone here. And I'll be in touch soon with more information, more resources, more webinars, and everyone stay safe and be healthy. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.